StoneZONE with legendary Republican strategist and political icon and pundit Roger Stone. Stone has served as a senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a longtime friend and advisor of President Donald Trump. As an outspoken libertarian, Stone has appeared on thousands of broadcasts, spoken at countless venues, and lectured before the prestigious Oxford Political Union and the Cambridge Union Society. Due to his 4+ decades in the political and cultural arena, Stone has become a pop culture icon. And now, here's your host, Roger Stone.
Welcome, I'm Roger Stone, and yes, you are back in the Stone Zone. Donald Trump has won a stunning legal victory, forcing ABC to pay $15 million because their correspondent, political operative, and Democrat activist and donor, George Stephanopolous, accused Donald Trump of being a rapist, and he has not been convicted of rape, nor is he liable for rape, to use the exact words that Stephanopolous used. This is a precedent lawsuit that I think is historic and important. Here to help me break it down is my co-host. It is the editor-in-chief of the Illinois Review, Mark Vargas.
Great to be with you, Roger.
So we can show some of these headlines. This is a stunning victory because, as you know, Mark, in the wake of the New York Times, a decision on the New York Times versus Sullivan, unfortunately, under U.S. libel law, well, you can say pretty much anything about anyone, whether it's true or not, and have few legal consequences. You have to prove malice. You have to prove that this was willful. Pardon me. But this is an important victory, and you at the Illinois Review have pointed out that former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, who's a shrewd observer of these things, has pointed out that Governor J.B. Pritzker, the rather rotund governor of Illinois, went on television several times and accused the president of being a rapist, which seemed to me, therefore, that Pritzker is ripe for a lawsuit. You're thinking?
Absolutely. And Pritzker is the wealthiest governor in the country. He was born on third base and thinks he hit a triple, but he is the billionaire heir to the Hyatt Hotel fortune worth over $4 billion. But you're right, Roger. Since June, it's been well documented in national media interviews on MSNBC, in speeches that he's given, in tweets on X. He has consistently and repeatedly referred to President Trump as an adjudicated rapist. And former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, a foe of Pritzker, they've been political enemies for the last 5 years, ever since Governor Pritzker kept calling the White House to block Governor Blagojevich's presidential commutation. There's no love lost between the two of them. But Governor Blagojevich rightly pointed out, since ABC News is forced to settle with President Trump for $15 million, when will President Trump and his legal team sue the billionaire Governor J.B. Pritzker for defamation? Because this is a lie. And he's a registered and licensed attorney, by the way, here in Illinois, an officer of the court. Why would he consistently and repeatedly be sharing this lie, even though it is not true?
It seems to me also that there may be a bar complaint against him. But I also saw that the president is evidently talking about, may have actually filed suit against the Des Moines Register. Folks will remember that in just days before the election, the Des Moines Register published a poll which showed that Kamala Harris was 3 points ahead in a state in which Trump's own internal polling at that point had him up by almost 12 points. The problem, of course, is that the paper will argue that they believe the poll. Therefore, this was not election interference. I also don't know of a specific crime framed around election interference itself, although I'm not an attorney. It would seem to me that the lawsuit against Pritzker is much more, both has the precedent of the lawsuit against ABC, but it is also much more clear cut as a case of defamation.
That's right. And, Pritzker repeatedly referred to that Iowa poll, his next door neighbor, where it had Kamala Harris up by 3 points and she ended up losing by 16 points. That was one of his most favorite polls to cite, proving in his mind how Donald Trump was losing ground in key states like Iowa. But no, I think that this ABC News settlement sets an important precedent. And I think it's important to hold people accountable like J.B. Pritzker, who has the power of the office of the governor, a Biden-Harris surrogate, an individual, Roger, who when the decision came down to either Atlanta or Chicago for the Democratic National Convention, Pritzker, using his immense wealth, called President Biden and said, if you choose Chicago, I'll pay for the entire Democratic National Convention myself, which, as you know, totals over $100 million. And so he has the money. He's been caught red-handed, repeatedly referring to him as Trump as an adjudicated rapist. I think it's time for the Trump legal team to fight back.
Reading from Pritzker's his actual posting on Twitter, he says, Donald Trump is a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, and a congenital liar. He's a racist, sexist, misogynist, narcissist who wants to use the levers of power to enrich himself and punish anyone who dares speak a word against him. Pardon me, but I think this gentleman just described J.B. Pritzker to a T. I can't, except for the rapist and convicted felon part, that he is not. But the rest of that refers, I think, pretty clearly to him. It is really extraordinary that he thinks that he can just evade responsibility. All right, Mark, what else do you have in your mind? By the way, joining us here in a bit, Colonel John Mills, with a distinguished career serving his country, a man who knows a lot about military strategy and intelligence gathering, as well as the drones, joins us to talk about what's with these drones. Where do they come from? Who do they belong to? And what is their goal? Mark?
It's going to be a fascinating conversation. You have friends in New Jersey as well, and I just literally got off the phone with a friend in New Jersey and said he's had dozens of drones flying over his home, and he said it's sort of an uncomfortable feeling knowing that these are everywhere in the sky. But Roger, before we touch on that, I just can't get over this fact of Van Jones, and I think we may have a clip of this, but Van Jones in a recent podcast interview who was trying to dispel the rumors that President Trump is an idiot and isn't smart. What he goes on to say is that President Trump is smarter than all of us. He's smart. He goes, he's smarter than you. He's smarter than me. How do I know? Because he won the White House. He won the House. He won the Senate. He controls the United States Supreme Court, and he won the popular vote. His best friend is the richest man in the history of the world. And he went on to describe Donald Trump as the most powerful man in the history of the world. And why I find this so profound coming from a man like Van Jones, Rogers, is your viewers always remember anytime it's talking about Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or Barack Obama, he would always cry, right? He'd get very emotional because of his love for the Democratic Party and his love for Obama. He was an Obama aide. He's a CNN political commentator. And so for Van Jones to come out and outline this the way he did during this podcast interview, I thought was absolutely remarkable.
How the hell did Donald Trump figure out the mainstream media is the fringe and the fringe is now the mainstream? How the hell did Donald Trump figure out? I mean, Joe Rogan is obvious, right? Like, we knew the guy had a big audience. It's not like we were like stunned, but like, how the hell was he, the 78-year-old guy who doesn't even have a computer and still like writes handwritten notes, how did he become the guy who cracked the code on, to your point, running a cultural, I don't even want to say campaign, running
it was a movement. Look,
heading a cultural movement versus a campaign.
Every one of your people knows Elon. Listen. Yeah, so everybody keeps, the problem is you have a framework in your mind that how can Donald Trump? Guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Donald Trump, let me just be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all critics. You know why we know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House,
Totally agree.
support the popular vote. He has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream built around him and for him, and a religious fervor in a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime, and we're still saying, well, how was this guy? We look like idiots to ordinary people.
You're totally right.
Look, what Van Jones is a smart guy. By the way, he's the only leftist who, when I actually met him in person, was civil. But that said, he's not a dumb guy. First of all, there is such thing as the market. CNN's viewership, which was never great to begin with, is in the toilet. MSNBC's is as bad or worse. They're not getting any traction on their hate Trump narrative, not getting any traction on their outrage over the possibility of January 6th pardons, particularly when Joe Biden is openly musing and his White House is leaking that he's considering pardons for virtually every registered Democrat in the country, not to mention some Chinese nationals who happen to have a giant stash of kiddie porn. They got pardoned too. I still can't figure that one out. So Van Jones recognizes that he has to maintain his credibility if he's going to have any future as a commentator. And he's absolutely right. I mean, Trump's election is more than just a triumph in an electoral contest. We've never seen this in the history of our country, where they literally used every lever of government and the courts and the media in an effort to kill his campaign for president. It was a massive case of using the tools of government, the authority of government, to interfere in an election. Ironically, what they accuse him of doing in interfering with the peaceful transfer of power, which very clearly he did not do. So Van Jones is moving with the market. Why do Mika and Joe head to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring? Now, Joe Scarborough and Mika, they loved Donald Trump. They laid by the pool at Mar-a-Lago. They drank his whiskey. They ate his food. Mika was making State Department personnel recommendations of globalists who, in some cases, got hired in the Trump administration. But that relationship fell apart, and it began to deteriorate when Joe was passed over for vice president. I know this sounds hard to believe, but Joe Scarborough believed that it should have been him rather than Mike Pence, and he was slighted that he was not considered. Remember, he is a former congressman from North Florida, where he was, by and large, kind of a run-of-the-mill conservative Republican. Of course, that's a very conservative district. It's the district currently held by Mike Waltz, or at least most of it. There's been a redistricting since then, but most of it. Speaking of that, Mark, it occurs to me that House Republicans only control the House by 3 seats. You have 2 resignations in Florida, and you have 1 resignation in New York. They have not, the seats in Florida have been vacated. Matt Gaetz resigned. Mike Waltz, I believe, resigned. Those special elections are set for April. Republicans expected to handily win both of them. Then you have the question of Elise Stefanik. Elise Stefanik has been nominated by the president to be our UN ambassador. In my opinion, this is one of the president's very best appointments. If you've seen any of the footage of her grilling the FBI director, Christopher Wray, you know she's a bulldog, just tenacious and relentless, fighting his attempts to evade answering any questions, ignoring the legitimate oversight authority of the Congress over the FBI and the Department of Justice. And of course, just this week, as you know, FBI Director Wray got caught in a humongous lie. According to a Inspector General's report, we now know that there was at least 26 undercover FBI operatives or or informants, and some of them dressed in Trump clothing. Why would you do that? Trump hats and Trump paraphernalia involved in January 6th. Again, FBI Director Comey evaded this question under any kind of congressional oversight. I would say that as someone who was charged with lying to Congress when there was no motive to lie, when no misstatement I made to the House was either willful or misleading, because there was no Russian collusion to lie about. There was no WikiLeaks collaboration to cover up. And the judge knew that because the evidence, the government had exculpatory evidence, which they suppressed at my trial. So it is quite different from what you have seen here, but I would be concerned about prosecution. Now, some people say, oh, Trump is on a revenge tour. This is about retaliation. No, I don't agree with that. I believe it is about rebalancing the scales of justice, having one specific standard of justice. When General James Clapper tells the Congress under oath that we do not have a metadata collection program on American citizens, and Edward Snowden proves that that's a lie, rather than face prosecution, because that's a material thing, rather than face prosecution, General Clapper is teaching ethics at Vermont College. Ethics. And he has a well-paid gig at CNN. This is just one example. The CIA director, the Muslim convert, John Brennan, who, by the way, as the CIA station chief, approved the visa for 4 of the Saudis who were attackers of America on 9/11. That John Brennan, he lies under oath to a Senate committee about spying on a Senate committee that was monitoring. He was monitoring their investigation of his use of illegal torture as the CIA director. Proven to be a lie. He issues an apology. That doesn't fix it, yet he is not prosecuted. Rod Rosenstein actually testified before the Congress when questioned about the Russian collusion hoax. He was specifically asked whether it was him who approved the investigation into Roger Stone, and he said, no, it was not. Yet I have in discovery, and it's a public document, the signed authorization of my investigation in October of 2018. So, but of course, he faces no penalty for this material lie. This list goes on and on, Mark.
It is. And Roger, it's no surprise that it was, in fact, CNN that was tipped off to your early morning pre-dawn raid where nearly 30 hostage SWAT team members raided your home and pointed an assault rifle at your wife Nydia's head when she woke up from bed. This is no surprise. And what happens, Roger, when you're like an Andrew Weissman who destroys thousands and thousands of individuals and families with the Arthur Anderson debacle, and only to have that reversed by the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously? He destroyed all of these families. And what happens? He gets promotions and multi-million-dollar legal commentating positions on with mainstream media outlets. It's absolutely outrageous. We need to begin to hold these people accountable. And Roger, this is yet exhibit. We could go through Exhibit A through Exhibit Z and then some of why the deep state in Washington is so afraid of a Kash Patel as an FBI director. Because imagine what's going to uncover. Imagine what he's going to uncover in literally just 24 hours on the job. They are scrambling. They're in panic mode. And so it's no secret that we're seeing the establishment, the swamp, fight back, because for so long they've protected their own. They've lied, they've cheated, they've deceived the American people. They've used their power and resources and offices to target political enemies like President Trump and you specifically, and they know that their gig is up.
I think that is true. All right, let's look north for another political discussion. It appears that the Liberal government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau hangs by a thread. His extraordinarily controversial deputy prime minister, pardon me, resigned hours before their budget was to be passed. Some of the most radical elements of his parliamentary coalition that have kept him in power are now openly saying he needs to go. It is amazing that this all seems to have been triggered by Donald Trump's making it very clear that we are going to have a balanced, fair trading relationship with our neighbors to the north. And no longer are they going to be able to take advantage of the United States. And that if they are not prepared to engage in free, fair trade, which is beneficial to both countries, well, then he's going to hit them with extraordinary tariffs. Then, of course, to kind of rub it in, because he is Donald Trump, he refers to Canada as the great state of Canada, and to Justin Trudeau as the governor. This after his suggestion that maybe if the Canadians are smart, they would just become our 52nd state. I think we got a video here that kind of describes the situation in Canada.
Just a few weeks ago, the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am, and always will be, a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and in my government.
This is just typical of everything that's wrong with his presidency, of his prime ministership. He is woke to the nth degree, including the authoritarian policies in which people who had a completely peaceful protest and over their refusal to be vaccinated, the so-called truckers rally, which made history, saw an authoritarian response from his government in which those who were involved, not a single one of whom is accused of violence, by the way, every one of them acting peacefully in their truck convoy, they have their bank accounts frozen. They are illegally charged. This is jackboot authoritarianism to the nth degree. Then you add to it the efforts essentially to outlaw the ownership of firearms and to identify where every current firearm in the country is. So preventing new sales of firearms by anyone, preventing, therefore, the purchase of a new firearm, and then building a database to track where every gun in the country is, saying essentially, if you do not report to the government that you own firearms and the specifics, a number of them, you will be liable for a felony for which we can send you to prison. I can't even imagine why they would need a list of every gun. What do you think, Mark?
Well, Justin Trudeau's approval ratings are in the gutter. I mean, Head Lice has a higher approval rating than Trudeau. I mean, I've been told that if the election were held today, his party would come in 4th place. But the priorities are all about Trudeau. If you remember, while he's jumping up and down at a Taylor Swift concert, singing along and trading Swiftie bracelets with little teenage girls, just not far from there, Montreal was literally on fire as anti-Israel protesters were taking over that city. And while people's lives were in danger and the city was going up in flames, where was their prime minister? Trading Swiftie bracelets with teenage girls. It's laughable that he would give a speech in Canada saying basically that United States doesn't want to vote a woman in to the presidency, while at the same time he's disparaging his own female deputy ministers and asking for their resignations because they aren't listening to him. I mean, this is a do as I say, not as I do. He is just symbolic of what we're seeing here in the United States from the Democratic Party is just the two different faces. And so it's no reason they expect him to perhaps resign here at any moment. His government is completely falling apart. And this is no surprise. No matter how hard he tries to align himself with President Trump or how fast he flies down to Mar-a-Lago for dinner, it's not going to save his failing prime ministership.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back with Colonel John Mills to talk to us about this infestation of UFOs, pardon me, I should say drones, but maybe they are UFOs that are seeming to be thousands of them across the country. If you follow Candace Owens, you know that she has reported on the extremely extraordinarily controversial story of an attack by the Israeli military against an American ship, the USS Liberty, and she has revealed and exposed that President Lyndon Baines Johnson authorized this attack. This was a false flag operation in which there was a goal of blaming the attack in which the Israelis killed hundreds of U.S. service members on Egypt as a provocation for war in the Middle East. It is a stunning story, and it is well documented in my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. There's an entire chapter about the USS Liberty in which I document that everything that USS Liberty veterans who are still living, the few that still survive, and that Candace Owens is reporting is accurate. I also outline the plot in which Big Texas Oil, the Central Intelligence Agency, organized crime, and the Secret Service, with the cover-up of the FBI, were all deeply involved in the murder of President John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963. For the history or political buff in your family, this is a great Christmas Christmas present, pardon me. It reads like a murder mystery and is, I point out, a New York Times bestseller. You can order your copy, and we'll get it to you before Christmas by going to themanwhokilledkennedy.com, themanwhokilledkennedy.com. I would ask that you check it out today. I think it will please those you give it to as a holiday gift. All right, we're now going to go to our guest. Colonel John Mills has served his country with distinction. He's been a frequent guest on this show, also has joined me on my show at 77 WABC Radio. He served in the the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security. He's an expert on cybersecurity, technology, and critical infrastructure programs, among other areas of geopolitical expertise. My good friend and man I look to about any military or geopolitical, military or international issue, our good friend, Colonel John Mills.
Oh, thank you, Roger. Always an honor to be on your show. Thank you for that introduction.
Well, you are a truth teller, and you're also extraordinarily knowledgeable based on your vast experience. I could have read your entire biography, but it would have taken up half the time that we have to speak to you. That's how diverse your assignments have been, and how diverse both your public and private sector, I should say, public service and private sector experience are. So take it from me, folks. This is a man whose predictions have been eerily accurate, recent, I would say, but who I go to on questions like this. So the subject on the table is obviously the one that millions of Americans want to know about, and these drones. They actually kind of are first seen in my native state of Connecticut. These are not hobbyist drones based on first-person visuals of them. These are enormous crafts that are the size of an SUV or a car. There's nothing from our government but silence, other than telling people, please don't shoot at them. So let me just ask you off the top, Colonel, what's going on here?
Well, Roger, there's a lot of angles to this, but part of the problem is we got the three weasel circus of Mayorkas, Sullivan, and John Kirby, who, well, of course, nobody trusts anything that they have to say. And after the balloon episode of last year, why would anybody even want to trust the U.S. government? So, and then January 6th, and the coup against candidate Trump, and so on and so on. But these three have zero credibility. And Mayorkas was almost angry over the weekend that Americans were daring to report and speculate. So, wow, where do we begin with this? Something is going on. These are not UFOs. A trend line always takes 3 points. Well, we got 3 points. It's Virginia Beach last December for 17 days. It was early in November up around Picatinny Arsenal in New Jersey. Late November, it was 3 of our air bases in England and East Anglia, Lakenheath, Mildenhall, and Feltwell. Now we're back to New Jersey, but we're also seeing them in oh my goodness, we're seeing them in Ohio. We're seeing them at Hill Air Force Base, which is very interesting, because what do we keep at Hill Air Force Base? Well, those are essentially all of our backup Minuteman III missiles that haven't been put in a silo or undergoing maintenance or getting ready for a test fire. So of course, a foreign power would want to know the status of each of those Minuteman missiles laying horizontal, getting ready to be worked on or prepped or whatever. And then we got a Chinese national who's been arrested for flying over Vandenberg, which is where we shoot a lot of our secret satellites into space out of, and we also have all of our West Coast interceptor missiles to shoot down incoming missiles. I mean, something's going on. We're not getting truth out of the federal government. Very disconcerting. And if they actually don't know what's going on, this is PSYOP and Public Affairs 101. Just tell the truth. Just tell the truth. But no, they can't do that.
But what we've seen instead, I think, is a willful effort to minimize it. So John Kirby, a man who has no credibility left, the White House spokesman for the Pentagon, comes out and says, well, there's, X thousand registered lawful drones in the country. That's a non sequitur. That doesn't mean that those drones are, of course, these drones, but that's what he's trying to imply. So I guess here is the question, because every day we learn a little more. There are reports, currently you have to tell us how credible, that what these drones may be searching for, first of all, they may be government drones, are government drones. And what they may be searching for is a nuclear material, potentially even a warhead that has gone missing, that the government cannot account for, and that may well be the purpose of the drones. Your thoughts on this line of thinking?
Well, yeah. There's actually the Nuclear Regulatory Commission released an alert that some medical grade nuclear material had gone missing in New Jersey. And it was a citizen who pointed this out to everybody, this NRC report. See, we're getting better citizen reporting than from corrupt legacy media or from the US government. And that it is medical grade nuclear material, but could potentially be used in a dirty bomb scenario. Are they looking for a potential the missing medical grade nuclear material? There's rumors of a lost warhead going back to Soviet days that went unaccounted for in Ukraine. There's that. We do have a response package for what we would call loose nukes inside of America. And I'm a bit familiar with that because I was in the early 2000s. I did have some experience with that and understand what's happening. So we didn't have drones back then, but were they using some of these larger kind of agricultural grade drones with sniffers and sensors to detect nuclear material? Absolutely. So there's that. But when you start talking about swarms, large drones, these are no longer hobbyists. And everybody goes, well, they were properly squawking on ADSB. And they had their collision avoidance lights on. So it must be, people are just making this up. Well, we also had, just because they're showing their collision avoidance lights, that doesn't mean they're flying legally. What would be more, what would be more suspicious, a drone without the lights or a drone flying with the collision lights on? So, I mean, actually, if you want to be get unnoticed, fly with your collision avoidance lights on, because you're flying without them. That's going to be an immediate red flag. And ADS-B, that's essentially the system. We don't use radars for air traffic control. ADS-B is where the air platform self-reports itself to the Federal Aviation Administration. Radar is secondary or tertiary at best, if we even have radar coverage. People go, oh, we do not have perfect radar coverage. We'd go broke trying to create perfect radar coverage. It's ADS-B is the primary, and that presumes a compliant and cooperative air vehicle that is squawking correctly, and it's not being spoofed. It's not squawking out a fake signal on a false identity. We do not have perfect air situational awareness. AIS is the maritime equivalent for offshore. We had Representative Van Drew reporting on this, and immediately everybody's, oh, there's absolutely no Iranian ship offshore. Well, we don't even know where there is a large Iranian ship that's specifically a drone mothership. It doesn't use AIS. Our Navy ships actually, unless they're in combat conditions, actually squawk on AIS. Iran never squawks on AIS, so we don't know where that ship is at right now. And these are all plausible and reasonable things. So we're getting horrible reporting. We have all this chatter that scoffs and disregards any reporting. Oh, ADS-B would report that. Oh, they have their collision avoidance lights on. Well, hey, something is going on, very suspicious. And I got some, when we're ready, I do have some slides we can kind of walk through and show some of the story.
Let's do that right now.
Okay, let's go ahead and hit that first slide. Hey, we got to go back. Here's an important one. The oval in the bottom left, those are our three bases in England. Now, over the last couple of months, there's been a surge of Chinese shipping. That green arc is if a ship is coming over the polar route into the Baltic. Well, guess what? There's been a huge surge of Chinese ships. And guess what? China in the Baltic is acting as a proxy for Russia, which is Russia is a proxy of China. Why? Because Russia is tied down in the war, and these Chinese merchant vessels, those three red ovals to the right in the Baltic, those are all undersea cable breaks and gas line breaks caused by Chinese ships dragging their anchor. Now that red line from the green arc down to the red oval, that's only about 370 miles. So if one of those Chinese ships goes AIS silent, in less than a day, they could be at a launch point. Or if they go south through a channel route, they'd be going right by those bases. So what am I saying? Hey, maybe those drones in the UK, could they have come from an offshore mothership? Oh, yeah. Well, the Royal Air Force is down to about 2 aircraft right now, and probably they're both undergoing maintenance. So would the RAF know about this, the once mighty RAF, or the once mighty Royal Navy that has the smallest fleet since 1536? Would they have any idea what's going on in the North Sea? No. So it's very limited. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Hey, so this is December from December of 2023, 17 days. This is the Virginia Beach area. These are the different U.S. government facilities and military bases, because there's more than just Department of Defense. There's other government agencies down there. From the top left, which is another government agency. Then you get Cheatham Annex, then you get Yorktown Naval Weapons Station. And this is kind of interesting because that third oval in the top left, that's Yorktown Naval Weapons Station. Well, so what, John? Well, we're talking about, it's now federal law. We're putting the W-80 nuclear warheads back on the Tomahawks like Trump wanted to in the first place, and then Biden sabotaged. Well, that's likely where some of the Tomahawks are going, is Yorktown. And that just, hey, you just notice the construction signs at Yorktown. They say certain things that give the indicator they're prepping probably for a return of the nuclear tomahawks. Earl Naval Weapons Station, New Jersey, that huge pier at the top end of New Jersey, just below the mouth of New York Harbor. Some of the drones flying over Earl. Probably a foreign power wants to know, are we storing some of the nuclear tomahawks up at Earl? But look at this whole cluster of bases. This is the largest military base cluster in the entire world for any military of any government. 17 days flew unopposed. Why? Because we don't have a resolved interagency process and capability for dealing with these counter drone operations in the United States. So we had an Air Force general sitting on top of the roof of one of the buildings at Langley Air Force Base, reporting on this and watching these drones come right up to the fence line. They were smart enough. They knew the legal protocol. They didn't cross the fence line. That's showing they're pretty smart. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next one, please. Oh yeah. Here's a great one. During the Cold War, Roger, you and I might remember. I don't know about your guest how if he remembers the Cold War, but hey, these were the missile bases we had in the Virginia Beach area to protect Virginia Beach from any kind of air attack. They're all gone. They're all gone. We have nothing, nada, zippo, zilch down there. But it's good memories from the Cold War when we actually once had a very strong and credible defense. Let's go to the next slide, please. Oh yeah, so this is an F-22 this is a weather awning. This is not a ballistic protection. However, you lay Kevlar blankets on top of this, and you even put like kind of an extended chain link fence over the top of this, which allows essentially a blast separation. You could get some pretty good defense from drones dropping weapons. But this is an F-22 at Langley. These weather shelters are great. If you ever worked on an aircraft in 100-degree weather, you appreciate these awnings. Well, we need to harden even our domestic bases. Overseas, we don't have enough. We need to build a lot more, especially in the Pacific. These are huge concrete structures, but a drone could do mayhem. Let's look at this next slide, please. Yeah, top photo. That's Oceana Naval Air Station, one of those bases down in the Virginia Beach area. Look how we store our aircraft. Boy, isn't that a nice, juicy target? Look down below. What's that? That's Hickam Field, right below, at Pearl Harbor, right before Pearl Harbor in December 41. Does anybody notice a similarity? Look at the way our aircraft are postured. Peacetime, easy. One pass, boom. All of our East Coast Navy fighters knocked out. So this is extremely dangerous. This is where when Pete Hegseth and Donald J. Trump talks about a plucking of generals and admirals, this is why we got to do it. We're operating in a peacetime basis, in a peacetime attitude. Top and bottom, look at, what is it, 80 years apart, 85 years apart? Look at, we're still parking all of our East Coast jet fighters for the Navy. Look at that. One pass, they're gone by a quadcopter, one of these agricultural grade quadcopters. They're gone. Let's look at the next slide. Yeah, this is the Ukrainians, but this is the kind of one of their home built quadcopters. Those are 60 millimeter mortar rounds. Those are pretty effective. You have, 2 or 3 of those just go over the top of all those Navy fighters. They're gone. They're history. Look at all those, and this is an improvised version of a quadcopter. But look at that, can carry easily a dozen of those 60 millimeter rounds. Well, those are pretty effective at wiping out those Navy fighters on the ground. So that's why those ballistic, some of those weather shelters converted with ballistic protection, kind of important. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is kind of what's going on in the Pacific. So the yellow oval, that's Taiwan. The red ovals, that's where the 3 Chinese carriers are at. That's as of December 11th. But this is very concerning because the Chinese have been doing the greatest surge of aircraft around Taiwan ever. The greatest number of ships and aircraft sortied since the 90s and the third Strait crisis during the Clinton years. So this is very concerning. And we do have 3 carriers, the right 3 ovals. You got the George Washington up near Japan. You got the Carl Vinson over to the right, coming from Hawaii. You have the Abraham Lincoln down to the south. On the top of the Philippines there, that's where we've deployed some of those A-10s, those incredible A-10s that the big Air Force hates and wants to get rid of. Those are the big tank buster. They can really take a lot of punishment and really dish it out. And we also have the Army has put the new Typhoon missiles in there, which look, those can range deep into China. Great deterrence. That bottom yellow oval, that's where the Chinese are also surging, trying to take away Palawan Island, essentially, from the Philippines. This is getting extremely dicey. And when I was there in Taiwan in September, the defense officials said, John, they're going to try to quarantine us, just like what Kennedy did in Cuba. That was a quarantine. That was not a blockade. There's a legal difference. So they said, John, the Chinese are going to quarantine us in 6 months, where we're through 3 months into that 6-month window. Let's go on. I got at least 1 or 2 more slides. Now I have to explain this, the chaos in South Korea. Lee to the left there. So he leads, and it's literally called the Democratic Party in South Korea. It is definitely left leaning. Now, some South Koreans get very upset at this assertion. I'm sorry. It is well documented. Lee is absolutely left leaning. He has referred to American forces as occupying forces on a number of occasions. The media is still quite censored, and big media in South Korea doesn't really fully report. Lee is left leaning. Onto the right, the middle green oval there. That's President Yoon. Now, he attempted a martial law. It's in the Constitution. He invoked martial law. The General Assembly, which is the National Assembly controlled by Lee, they convened. They voted it down, which is also part of their constitutional process. Very bad move by Yoon, but he felt that essentially the communists were close to really taking over South Korea. But I mean, a lot of people do not. Martial law is a bad thing, and the South Koreans did not take that well. And Yoon's paying a price right now. He just got impeached. Will likely get removed. We don't want a left-wing government, but martial law is a bad thing, and it really has a lot of his own party, the conservatives, they did not like it. They felt it was a very bad move. So South Korea, a very close partner, a very close ally, is very, very unstable right now. And they've impeached the president, and got a very good reporting in this. There's a lot of public rallies, and 2/3 of the public rallies, if you walk among the crowds, and I have very good sources on this, all you're not hearing Korean be spoken, you're hearing Chinese being spoken, because the communists have just flown in a overwhelming influence mob that is often, the majority of these rallies is actually Chinese nationality. So not in any way martial law is a bad thing, not any way endorsing that, but there is problems and extreme problems and issues in South Korea. And Lee, the Democratic Party candidate or leader, which is left leaning, they're very pro. They lean toward North Korea and China. And again, Lee constantly refers to the Americans as an occupation force. My father-in-law was wounded twice in 1950 in Korea. And I really, it's very offensive to refer to the Americans as an occupying force. And he refers to the communists as a liberating force. I mean, come on, you're going to say that he's not left wing? You got to be kidding me. So is there any more slides? Oh, there we go. The three weasel circus: Kirby, Mayorkas, and Sullivan. If their lips are moving, they're lying. So this is why we have a problem. January 20th cannot come fast enough. So Roger, pending your questions, that's some of the important things around the drones, and then the Asia Pacific situation.
I have one comment, and then I'm going to throw the next question to Mark. Jake Sullivan continues to amaze me. The Sussman trial, Michael Sussman was charged by Special Counsel John Durham, which is like charging the guy who drove the getaway car for double parking when you let the bank robbers, the people who actually enacted the Russian collusion hoax escape. But in his trial in D.C., we learned that Jake Sullivan absolutely knew that there was no computer terminal in Trump Tower connecting Trump to a Russian bank, that was a canard, a falsehood, a smear. Yet he authorized Hillary Clinton to say it anyway. He's also deeply involved in corralling the 51 intelligence experts, current and former, who falsely and knowingly falsely claim that Hunter Biden's laptop has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, which of course it doesn't, and it wasn't. How this guy continues to evade any consequences of his actions amazed me. I think he's the one making our foreign policy decisions largely in combination with Antony Blinken. Joe Biden's clearly not running the country. Stunning video by my friend James O'Keefe, if you haven't seen it, which is an undercover video of an NSA official saying that when President Biden was on a trip with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on the same airplane in the same hotel, Biden kept calling the White House, the National Security Unit, asking for Jake Sullivan. And when told, well, sir, Jake Sullivan is not here in Washington, he's actually in the same building with you, he's on this trip with you, Biden said, oh, okay, I'll call him on his cell phone. Whereupon he hung up and then called the same number in Washington again to ask for Jake Sullivan. Very disconcerting. Makes you wonder who's really running the country. Mark, next question to you.
Colonel, that was an incredible presentation. And my question to you is it time under a Trump administration to consider creating a drone force? Because it's clear there aren't any standard operating procedures or protocols in place. The national security threat, not just here, CONUS, but OCONUS, seems to be grave. Is it time to create this sort of government agency to really focus on this new set of what I would call drone type warfare?
Oh, thank you, Mark. Well, I think we need to distinguish the domestic threat from the overseas threat. The overseas counter drone situation, we're doing actually quite well, but you have a much different rules of engagement, and we can, we just fire up the Centurion Gatling gun. It's pretty effective at downing drones. We have a problem in the domestic airspace, and actually there's been a interagency task force meeting at the White House during most of the tenure of the Biden team, trying to resolve 3 interconnected domestic airspace operation issues. Essentially, urban air mobility, that's your Uber for the air, where you're actually delivering cargo and passengers via air traffic in the urban area. The FAA this is a dramatic increase in the number of air targets, air vehicles at any one time, unresolved air traffic procedures on this. So that's item number 1. Item number 2 is your small drone package delivery that Amazon and others are lobbying for. Again, a very complex issue, unresolved. The third one is counter drone authorities. There's 4 departments that have partial legal authority in very, very niche cases. That's the Department of Defense has legal authority if something crosses the fence line in a very, 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 very small niche of a certain bases. I'm not going to say which ones. Okay. The Department of Justice, FBI, they have some authority if in a declared national sensitive security event, Super Bowl, State of the Union, inauguration. Okay, DHS has certain authorities to engage if there's threats. And the fourth one is the actually Department of Energy, NNSA, National Nuclear Safety Administration, to secure the nuclear activities around the Nevada test site. But it's extremely unclear in about 95% of the American airspace what government agency is supposed to do what about a drone that may be a threat. It's extremely unresolved. Elon Musk and Vivek should grab this group on the afternoon of January 20th, lock them in a room for 72 hours, no bathroom breaks, no meals, until they get the basic concept of operation down where we could start implementing it and then improve from there. Mark, it's a great observation. It's just the problem is in the domestic airspace. Again, we only have legal. I'm not in any way trying to give Mayorkas an out or Biden an out because they said, oh, we don't have enough legal authorities. I think actually the DHS, they actually have the best legal authorities to address these issues. But we need a surveillance capability, which we really don't have. We need an alert capability to notify. Amber Alert. Remember those old sirens that used to go off every Wednesday at 12 o'clock at your local fire station during the Cold War? We need an audible alarm, just like they have in Israel. And then you need an engagement capability, kind of a safe Iron Dome type of capability. So, but look, they've known about this situation for years, and the bureaucrats in the deep state blob have just blathered endlessly in room 4405 of the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Trying not to be too specific, but it's nothing's happening. Get Vivek and lock these folks in a room, 72 hours, no bathroom, no food. Need a basic operating concept. That's it. We're done with the debating society.
All right, I'm afraid we have to wrap it up there. I want to thank our guest, Colonel John Mills. Colonel Mills, I hope to see you appointed to a high-level national security position in the incoming Trump Association. You've expressed interest in serving your country, and I'm hopeful that the president will take you up on your offer. I also want to thank my co-host, the editor of the Illinois Review. Tell people where people can go to see the Illinois Review, Mark.
Please visit us on illinoisreview.com, on Facebook and X.
There you go. Not hard to remember. I'm Roger Stone. Thanks for joining us here today on the Stone Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?